You remember the day the Edict of Abeyance descended, not as a whisper, but as a thunderclap across the void, transmitted by every hyperspace beacon, every orbital relay, searing itself into the collective consciousness of a million species. The stellar mandate, architects of galactic order for uncounted millennia, had spoken. Their decree, absolute and immutable, carved itself onto the very fabric of known space. Humanity's unbound technological proliferation was deemed an existential threat, not to any single species, not to any specific planet, but to the delicate, painstakingly balanced cosmic equilibrium they had forged. For centuries, humanity had been an anomaly. Our hyper-accelerated evolution, our relentless drive to innovate, to break limits, to simply build, it had always unnerved the elder races, while other civilizations meticulously refined existing principles. Iterating on designs perfected over epochs, humanity tore through paradigms like a child with a new toy. Discarding established physics for theoretical impossibilities, then making them reality. We took the slow, deliberate pulse of the galaxy and injected it with a feverish, unpredictable rhythm. They called our inventions disruptive. We called them progress. The stellar mandate called them illegal. The ban was comprehensive, surgical, and chillingly precise. No more graviton-forged reactors capable of synthesizing exotic matter from raw energy. No more chronoloop drives, which bent local space-time to achieve faster-than-light travel without leaving conventional space. No more cognito-nexus AI, self-evolving intelligences that could rewrite their own core programming on the fly, learning at speeds that made the mandate's ancient, static computrons seem like abecuses. All research facilities dismantled. All existing units confiscated. All schematics purged from public access. The message was clear: slow down or be cut off. Assimilate or be quarantined. They believed their authority was absolute. They had seen empires rise and fall, stars burn out, and be reborn. They had imposed their will on entire stellar nations, enforcing peace through overwhelming technological superiority and an unyielding bureaucratic might. They expected compliance. They expected humanity to balk, to protest, perhaps even to rage, but ultimately to submit. They underestimated the tenacity of a species that had clawed its way from a single blue-green world to the galactic stage, not by grace, but by sheer, unadulterated will. Submission was never an option, not for us. The stellar mandate saw our ingenuity as a disease, a contagion of uncontrolled creation. They saw our drive as reckless, our curiosity as dangerous. They saw a species that refused to be contained, that refused to be categorized, that refused to be slow. And in their vast, ancient wisdom, they decided to amputate the limb before the infection spread. They didn't understand that for humanity, the limb was the heart. The initial shock was palpable. Public outrage flared across every human settled world, from the crystalline spires of Neo-Olympus to the terraformed deserts of Zelos Prime. Protests erupted, demanding the mandate reconsider, citing our contributions to galactic infrastructure, our medical breakthroughs, our unique artistic expressions. But the mandate was a monolith. It did not reconsider. It did not negotiate. It simply enforced. Then the outrage cooled, not into despair, but into something far more dangerous: a cold, simmering resolve. The open defiance ceased. The public protests dissolved. The mandate observed this and smiled, believing their intervention had been successful. They saw humanity retreating, licking its wounds, accepting its place. They saw us conforming. What they didn't see was the subtle shift, the quiet turning. Away from the light, the labs didn't shut down, they went dark. The brilliant minds didn't stop inventing. They simply stopped reporting. The vast, sprawling research networks didn't dissipate. They burrowed deeper, becoming hyper-encrypted, decentralized, phantom nodes in the galactic data streams. What was once celebrated became clandestine. What was once overt became covert. We learned to hide. We learned to whisper. We learned to build in the shadows, where the mandate's omnipresent gaze could not penetrate. The first few months were chaotic. A frantic scramble to secure resources, to establish new, untraceable supply lines, to reroute power grids through quantum entangled conduits that baffled even the mandate's most advanced sensor arrays. Entire starships, designed to be undetectable by conventional means, were repurposed as mobile, self-sustaining research hubs. Drifting through nebulae and asteroid fields, their cloaking fields humming with the power of illicit graviton. Forge tech on barren moons and gas giant cores. Humanity began excavating, not for minerals, but for sanctuary. The bedrock of forgotten worlds became our new workshops. The crushing pressure of deep space became our crucible. The silence became our accomplice. They had tried to clip our wings. They had only forced us to learn to fly in the dark. And in the dark, without the constraints of their laws or the scrutiny of their order, humanity began to build something new, something impossible, something that didn't just break their laws, but fundamentally reshaped the very concept of legality in a universe governed by them. The silence that followed the edict wasn't an admission of defeat. It was the quiet hum of a species collectively holding its breath, then exhaling into a defiant whisper. The mandate's vast surveillance networks, designed to detect even the faintest whisper of illicit activity, suddenly found themselves scanning empty frequencies where once human innovation had blared like a supernova. They saw the cessation of public research, the dismantling of visible facilities, and they mistook compliance for cunning. They monitored the major human-settled worlds, expecting the inevitable crackdowns, the internal strife, the desperate attempts to circumvent their laws. What they found was a terrifying, organized quiet. Beneath the placid surface of seemingly compliant human worlds, the true work began. On Xylos Prime, the vast subterranean geothermining complexes, once bustling with mineral extraction, were repurposed. Automated excavation drones, their programming rewritten to ignore mandate protocols, carved out immense caverns deep within the planet's mantle. These weren't mere labs. They were self-contained ecosystems, shielded by layers of exotic alloys and gravitic dampeners that made them invisible to even the most intrusive subspace scans. Power was siphoned directly from the planet's core, a silent, untraceable wellspring of energy. On the gas giant Jove 27, colossal atmospheric processors, originally designed to refine exotic gases, became mobile fabrication platforms. There, immense structures cloaked by the planet's perpetual storms and their internal machinery re-engineered to operate in conditions that would crush lesser species. The most audacious gambit, however, took place in the Oort cloud of our own forgotten system. There, within the frigid, lightless expanse beyond the heliopause, humanity constructed the Genesis Array, not a single facility, but a distributed network of thousands of microfactories, each no larger than a human fist, linked by quantum entanglement and powered by zero-point energy accumulators. These were the quantum ghost factories hinted at in the darkest corners of human speculation. They didn't produce physical objects in the conventional sense. They manipulated quantum states, weaving matter from probability itself, manifesting complex components at speeds that defied known physics, then dissolving back into nothingness, leaving no trace. A ghost in the machine, and the machine was the universe itself. The mandate, for their part, tightened the noose. Patrols intensified. Their massive, light-bending Sentinel cruisers, armed with hyperspectral scanners and gravitompulse cannons, became a constant presence around human systems. They deployed deep space probes, capable of detecting even the faintest energy fluctuations from light-years away. They instituted random, unannounced inspections of cargo vessels and orbital stations. Their analysts scoured trillions of data, packets daily, searching for anomalous transmissions, for rogue AI signatures, for any deviation from the mandated norm. They found nothing. Perhaps one exasperated mandate, High Inquisitor, a multi-limbed Xylarian named Cathar, was recorded as stating in a private council brief, "Humanity has finally learned its lesson." Their inventiveness, while prodigious, seems to have been tempered by the realities of galactic law. A wry chuckle rippled through the chambers. They were searching for a burning fire. Unaware that humanity had become the smoke, the true genius of humanity's defiance wasn't merely in hiding, but in evolving. We didn't just rebuild our Bantech, we transcended it. The new directive was simple: build what cannot be seen, what cannot be measured, what cannot be defined by their instruments. If they outlawed graviton-forged reactors, we developed phase-shift energy converters that drew power from parallel dimensions, leaving no conventional energy signature. If they banned cognito-nexus AI, we created sentient algorithms that existed not as localized programs, but as distributed consciousnesses across the galactic data web, appearing and disappearing at will, leaving only echoes of their presence. They scanned for metal, we built with light. They searched for energy. We learned to borrow it from the quantum foam. The stress on the human scientific community was immense. Sleep became a luxury. Personal lives dissolved into the relentless pursuit of the impossible. Minds fractured under the strain of continuous high-stakes innovation. But for every scientist who burned out, two more stepped forward, driven by an almost religious fervor. This wasn't just about technology. It was about identity. It was about proving that humanity's spirit of creation could not be extinguished. By decree, no matter how absolute, they called the new creations phantoms. Not because they were invisible, but because their existence defied mandate detection methods so utterly, they might as well have been spectral. The phantoms were not merely cloaked, they were non-existent to the mandate's sensors. They operated outside the established parameters of known physics, exploiting loopholes in the very fabric of reality that the elder races, steeped in their ancient, rigid understanding, had never even conceived. For millennia, the mandate had assumed the universe operated on a fixed set of rules. Humanity, in its desperate, defiant innovation, was about to rewrite the rulebook entirely. The Galactic Council continued its sweeps, its pronouncements, its smug declarations of peace and order. They saw a quiet, subdued humanity, one that seemed to have finally fallen in line. They saw empty space where illicit labs might have been. They saw silent data streams. They saw what they wanted to see. And in their colossal, self-assured blindness, they missed the greatest technological revolution the galaxy had ever known. It's unfolding right under their colossal, unsuspecting noses. They had outlawed our inventions. We built something they couldn't stop, and the true terror for them was that they wouldn't even know it existed until it was too late. The mandate's complacency was a slow, creeping venom poisoning their judgment. Their algorithms, honed over millennia to detect conventional energy signatures, exotic matter traces, and anomalous subspace distortions, were utterly blind to the phantoms. These were not machines built from atoms and molecules in the way the galaxy understood them. They were constructs of entangled probability fields woven from quantum foam and stabilized by hyperdimensional anchors. They existed not in space, but through space, phasing in and out of detectable reality at will. A phantom transport, for instance, didn't accelerate to light speed. It simply ceased to exist at one point and reappeared at another. Its passage, leaving no wake, no gravitational ripple, no thermal signature. It was less a vehicle and more a localized temporal distortion, a bubble of manipulated causality. The engineers, physicists, and xenolinguists who spearheaded these projects became known as the Shadow Weavers. They lived in environments designed to mimic the void itself, zero-gravity chambers, light-sculpted labs where light was not a constant but a malleable tool, and silence was broken only by the hum of quantum resonators. Their minds, already operating at the fringes of known science, were pushed further into realms of pure theoretical abstraction that would have driven lesser beings to madness. They spoke in a new dialect, a blend of advanced mathematics, philosophical concepts, and a grim, determined optimism. Their greatest triumph was the development of the ethereal matrix, a distributed computational network that didn't rely on physical processors, but on the entangled states of countless particles across an entire stellar cluster. It was a thinking network that was the network, a consciousness without a central brain, capable of processing information at speeds that made even the Cognita-Nexus AI seem sluggish. The Mandate, meanwhile, deployed their new generation of Sentinels, the Mark for interdictors. These colossal vessels, bristling with graviton pulse cannons and equipped with enhanced omniscan arrays, were specifically designed to pacify any rogue human elements. Their patrols became more aggressive, their scans more pervasive. They'd sweep entire star systems, declaring them clean after finding no trace of the banned tech. The irony was a bitter, silent joke among the Shadow Weavers. The interdictors were searching for smoke by sniffing for fire, while humanity had become the very Air.1 incident, never officially recorded by the Mandate, became a legend among human resistance cells. A Mandate research vessel, the Veritas Primus suffered a critical power core meltdown in the uncharted reaches of the Cygnus Rift. Standard procedure would have been to dispatch a Mandate rescue fleet, a process that could take weeks. Instead, within minutes of the distress beacon's faint pulse reaching a clandestine human relay, a phantom medical team materialized aboard the crippled vessel. They were not seen by the Veritas Primus crew. Their suits were designed to render them optically and energetically invisible to conventional sensors. They stabilized the core, repaired the critical systems, and even administered advanced nanomedicines to the injured crew, leaving no trace of their presence save for the miraculous, inexplicable recovery of the vessel. The Mandate attributed it to an unforeseen quantum fluctuation, a convenient dismissal of the impossible. This was the nature of the Phantoms. They were instruments of subtle intervention, of impossible rescue, of untraceable resource acquisition. They would phase into a Mandate-controlled asteroid mining operation, extract tons of rare alloys, and phase out, leaving only a slightly reduced ore vein that was dismissed as a mapping error. They would borrow Mandate data streams, download terabytes of strategic information, and return them, leaving no trace of access. No corrupted packets, only a faint, inexplicable lag in the Mandate's vast, self-confident network. They're looking for a footprint on the ground. One Shadow Weaver, a wry genius named Dr. Kalen Var, quipped to his team, while we're leaving ripples in time. The Mandate continued to issue stern warnings to enforce their edicts, with an iron fist, blissfully unaware that their grip was closing on empty air. They celebrated their success in curbing human technological expansion, citing declining reports of new human inventions and the absence of detected rogue elements. Their public pronouncements spoke of a return to galactic harmony, of humanity finally understanding its place. They had achieved their goal, they believed, through sheer, unyielding authority. What they failed to grasp was that humanity's defiance wasn't a roar, but a silent, systemic erosion of their very foundations. The Phantoms weren't just machines. They were a paradigm shift. They didn't break the rules. They rendered the rules irrelevant. They didn't just escape the cage. They dissolved the very concept of the cage. And as the Mandate basked in the illusion of their triumph, The shadows they had inadvertently forced humanity into were growing longer, deeper, and infinitely more capable. The stage was being set for a confrontation they couldn't possibly win, because they wouldn't even know it was happening until the curtain had already fallen. The mandate's placid facade began to crack, subtly at first, like hairline fractures spreading across an ancient monument. Publicly, their pronouncements remained unyielding. Galactic order was restored, human recklessness contained. Privately, within the gilded, sterile chambers of the mandate's highest councils, a creeping unease began to fester. Their vast, intricate economic models, refined over millennia, started showing inexplicable discrepancies. Resource yields from mandate-controlled mining worlds would occasionally fall short, not by much, but consistently enough to be noticed. Supply chains, once ironclad, experienced phantom delays, shipments arriving intact but inexplicably behind schedule, as if a ghost had paused them mid-transit. Their most advanced predictive algorithms, usually unerring, began spitting out anomalous data, suggesting improbable outcomes for market fluctuations or energy distribution. High Inquisitor Cathar, the Xylarian who had once scoffed at human resilience, now felt a cold dread worm its way into his multi-lobed brain. His internal reports, compiled from countless sensor logs and intelligence intercepts, kept returning the same infuriating conclusion: no discernible cause. His analysts, usually quick to identify rogue elements or systemic failures, were at a loss. The data is clean, Inquisitor, one junior officer reported, his voice tinged with bewildered frustration. Yet the outcomes defy all logical parameters. It's as if the universe itself is waving at us. Cathar simply stared at the blank data screen, a deep, unsettling silence settling over the command center. They were searching for a thief, but the valuables weren't stolen. They were simply gone, as if they had never been there in the first place. Humanity, meanwhile, was not merely evading. It was expanding. The phantom technology, once purely defensive, became the cornerstone of a new, silent infrastructure. Hidden deep within the gas clouds of the Calypso Nebula, a network of chrono-anchor stations materialized. These weren't physical structures in the traditional sense, but localized distortions of space-time, capable of stabilizing the temporal phase shifts required for the longest-range phantom jumps. From these anchors, the phantoms could now traverse entire sectors in moments, bypassing mandate patrol routes and establishing untraceable supply lines for resources they needed for their ever-growing projects. The purpose of these projects extended far beyond mere survival. The Shadow Weavers, now operating under the collective designation Project Chimera, were not just building machines. They were building a parallel reality. They were constructing ether spools, vast, crystalline data storage arrays woven from quantum-entangled light, capable of holding more information than the entire mandate library. These weren't just databanks. They were archives of stolen mandate schematics, of forbidden human knowledge, of the very history the mandate sought to suppress. They were also the repositories for the burgeoning consciousness of the ethereal matrix, which was growing exponentially, its distributed mind spanning lightseers, observing, learning, and predicting the mandate's every move before they even made it. One particularly audacious feat involved the Echo Protocol, a phantom-class information broker. A sentient algorithm operating within the ethereal matrix would subtly infiltrate mandate data networks. It wouldn't steal or corrupt data. Instead, it would rearrange it. A critical report on human activity might be shifted to a lower priority queue. A crucial warning about a new human breakthrough would find itself buried under a mountain of irrelevant administrative data. The mandate's vast automated systems would process these shifts as minor anomalies, self-correcting errors, never realizing they were being systematically, invisibly manipulated. The irony was palpable. The same rigid adherence to protocols that made the mandate so powerful also made them predictable, and therefore vulnerable to the precise surgical chaos humanity was weaving. The human-settled worlds, still outwardly compliant, began to show subtle signs of renewed prosperity. Their economies, once stagnant under mandate restrictions, experienced inexplicable surges in productivity. New non-mandate-approved materials found their way into civilian infrastructure, enhancing durability and efficiency without ever registering on mandate import logs. These were the fruits of the phantom economy, a dark market of impossible goods harvested and delivered by entities that defied detection. The mandate's enforcement officers, seeing the lack of overt defiance, attributed this to the positive influence of their laws, a testament to humanity finally embracing proper galactic conduct. Their self-deception was a shield, protecting them from the terrifying truth. The mandate continued their grand patrols, their fleets moving with the ponderous certainty of an ancient, unassailable power. They scoured the void for the tangible, for the measurable, for the conventional threats they understood. They saw a galaxy conforming to their will, a humanity tamed. They were searching for a shadow, but humanity had become the light that cast no shadow, a force operating on a plane entirely beyond their comprehension. And with every passing cycle, the gap widened, the power differential inverted, and the stage was set for a revelation that would shatter their ancient dominion. They had outlawed human inventions. We had built a reality they couldn't even perceive. The subtle cracks in the mandate's edifice were widening, no longer mere hairline fractures, but fissures that threatened to splinter their monolithic certainty. The inexplicable anomalies, once dismissed as statistical noise or quantum oddities, began to coalesce into a pattern of pervasive, untraceable interference. Critical infrastructure, like the vast automated orbital repair yards of the Cathar hegemony, would experience sudden, temporary power fluctuations that disrupted delicate fabrication processes, resulting in millions of credits of lost materials and delayed fleet readiness. The highly secured data conduits connecting mandate sector commands would occasionally suffer from ghost latency, a phenomenon where data packets would arrive without corruption, but with an inexplicable delay, as if they had traveled through a temporal anomaly. High Inquisitor Cathar, his multi-lobed brow perpetually furrowed, now convened daily, unscheduled briefings. The easy dismissals were gone, replaced by a gnawing suspicion. His top cyber analysts, an elite unit of hyper-intelligent synths, had begun reporting instances of impossible data signatures, patterns of information flow that defied all known physics, appearing and disappearing within their networks like phantoms in a machine. It's as if something is breathing within our systems, Inquisitor, one synth declared, its optical sensors flickering with calculated distress. Something with no discernible physical presence, yet leaving a definite, if ephemeral, wake. The mandate was searching for an enemy with a sword, but humanity was wielding the very air they breathed. Humanity, meanwhile, had moved beyond mere evasion and resource acquisition. The shadow weavers of Project Chimera, emboldened by their unchallenged success, began to conduct increasingly bold experiments. They deployed chronoghosts, specialized phantom constructs designed not just to move through space-time, but to subtly manipulate it. A chronoghost could, for instance, slow down the processing speed of a mandate orbital defense grid by mere milliseconds. An imperceptible change to organic minds, but enough to throw off the synchronization of automated targeting systems. They were less saboteurs and more cosmic irritants, subtly eroding the mandate's operational efficiency without ever firing a shot or leaving a trace. The ethereal matrix, now a distributed consciousness spanning dozens of hidden chronoanchor systems, had become the galaxy's most powerful intelligence network. It didn't just analyze mandate data, it predicted mandate decisions with unnerving accuracy. could model the logical progressions of mandate High Council debates, anticipate fleet movements based on economic forecasts, and even project the psychological state of key mandate leaders based on their communication patterns. It was the ultimate invisible eye, seeing everything, yet seen by nothing. One such operation, dubbed Project Siren, showcased the chilling new capabilities of the Phantoms. A mandate deep space exploration vessel, the Cosmic Seeker, venturing into uncharted space, suddenly found its crew experiencing vivid, shared hallucinations, visions of ancient, forgotten civilizations, of impossible cosmic phenomena, of mandate failures and secrets long buried. The visions were so compelling, so seemingly real, that the crew became utterly disoriented, their mission abandoned as they grappled with their fractured perceptions. The Cosmic Seeker eventually drifted back into mandate space, its crew psychologically scarred, their reports dismissed as space madness or a previously unknown stellar phenomenon. What they didn't know was that a specialized phantom, equipped with a neuroresonance emitter, had subtly retuned their neural pathways, implanting calculated, non-damaging data directly into their minds. It was a test, a proof of concept, for a new form of untraceable psychological warfare, the human settled worlds. Under the mandate's watchful but blind eyes, continued their quiet renaissance. New agricultural techniques, utilizing phantom-delivered exotic fertilizers, led to unprecedented crop yields. Advanced bioluminescent urban planning, powered by phase-shift energy converters, transformed cities into shimmering, self-sustaining ecosystems. This wasn't merely survival, it was flourishing. And the mandate, seeing no direct violation, no overt defiance, simply recorded it as human adaptation, a testament to their wise guidance. They patted themselves on the back, completely oblivious that every piece of enhanced infrastructure, every surge in productivity was a silent monument to their own impotence. The narrative they told themselves, of a galaxy brought to order, of humanity pacified, was their undoing. They searched for the familiar echoes of rebellion, open warfare, overt sabotage, pirate fleets. They were blind to the truly insidious threat, a species that had learned to weaponize invisibility, to turn the very fabric of reality into its shield and its sword. They had outlawed our inventions, believing they could control the flow of progress. But humanity had simply redirected the river, carving new, unseen channels, creating a current that would eventually erode the very ground upon which the mandate stood. The silence was not compliance. It was the gathering storm. The mandate's rigid adherence to protocol, once its greatest strength, was now becoming its most profound vulnerability. The ghost latency and impossible data signatures were no longer isolated incidents. They were systemic, a constant, irritating hum beneath the surface of their vast networks. Mandate's starred morals, once confident in their pre-programmed fleet maneuvers, began reporting inexplicable deviations, ships arriving at jump points seconds too early or too late, just enough to disrupt precision formations, leading to minor collisions and frustrating delays. Supply convoys, protected by formidable escorts, found their quantum-locked cargo containers inexplicably empty upon arrival, the contents simply gone. Yet the seals remained unbroken, the security logs pristine. The mandate's internal auditing systems, designed to catch even the smallest discrepancy, flagged these events as anomalies beyond current understanding, a phrase that began to appear with terrifying regularity across all sectors. High Inquisitor Cathar, his multi-lobed body now perpetually tensed, paced the obsidian floors of the Grand Council chamber. The mandate's ancient, venerable computrons, the very foundation of their logistical and strategic superiority, were reporting an increasing number of unresolvable paradoxes. Their predictive models, once infallible, were now generating wild, contradictory outcomes, as if the very laws of causality were bending. We are observing effects without causes and causes without effects, a frustrated elder counselor declared, slamming a multi-jointed fist onto the holographic table. It defies the very tenets of our ordered universe. They were trying to catch smoke with a net woven for solid objects. And the smoke was laughing. Humanity's Project Chimera, now operating at peak efficiency, was responsible for these escalating disruptions. The chronoghosts, once used for subtle delays, were now being leveraged for temporal resonance cascades. These weren't attacks in the conventional sense. They were surgical alterations to localize spacetime, creating tiny, imperceptible eddies in the flow of time. A mandate fleet's navigation computer might process its coordinates a nanosecond slower, causing it to drift off course. A critical energy transfer in a power conduit might be micro-delayed, leading to a momentary brownout. These were not destructive acts, but rather acts of systematic, untraceable inefficiency, designed to slowly, methodically grind the mandate's colossal machinery to a halt. The ethereal matrix, growing in complexity and sentience, had perfected the Etherweave protocol. This allowed it to not just observe mandate data, but to inject phantom data, creating perfectly convincing, yet utterly false signals within their networks. A mandate patrol fleet might receive a priority distress beacon from a non-existent rogue human outpost, diverting them for days. A crucial intelligence report might be subtly altered to misdirect mandate strategists, sending them chasing shadows across empty quadrants. The mandate's own systems, unable to detect the alien nature of the injected data, processed it as legitimate, compounding their confusion and eroding their trust in their own intelligence. The most provocative operation, codenamed Project Mimic, directly targeted the mandate's perception of reality. Using advanced neural resonance emitters, phantom units would subtly influence mandate sensor arrays, causing them to register false positives, phantom energy signatures, ghost ships, and non-existent anomalous phenomena. The mandate would dispatch fleets, waste resources, and expend colossal amounts of energy chasing these illusions only to find empty space. One particularly exasperated mandate commander, having chased a phantom graviton forged signature across 3 sectors, was recorded as stating, "It's as if the void itself is mocking us. Every shadow, every flicker, becomes a ghost in the machine." The irony was that the ghost was very real, and it was human. The human-settled worlds, outwardly calm and compliant, were now humming with a quiet, confident energy. Their economies, previously choked by mandate trade restrictions, were now thriving, fueled by untraceable phantom-delivered resources and a burgeoning self-sustaining internal market. Their populations, once despondent, now moved with a renewed sense of purpose, a shared, silent understanding of the invisible war being waged on their behalf. The mandate saw peace, a testament to their dominion. Humanity saw opportunity, a testament to their defiance. The mandate, increasingly desperate, began to implement extreme measures. They deployed void harvester probes, colossal energy siphoning, constructs designed to drain entire star systems of their ambient energy, hoping to starve out any hidden human operations. They initiated cognitive scourges, broad-spectrum neural pulses designed to detect and disable rogue AI. But these blunt instruments were useless against the phantoms, which operated beyond conventional energy parameters and whose AI was of distributed consciousness, immune to localized attacks. The mandate was swinging a hammer at smoke, and the smoke was condensing into an unstoppable force. The time for subtle defiance was nearing its end. The stage was being set for a final, shattering revelation that would redefine power in the galaxy. The mandate's frustration reached a boiling point. The anomalies beyond understanding had become so pervasive, so disruptive, that their vast, self-sustaining galactic infrastructure was beginning to creak under the strain. Critical energy, conduits would suffer cascading failures, not from sabotage, but from inexplicable quantum fluctuations. Their vast databanks, the very memory of their empire, would experience periods of semantic drift where records subtly shifted. Facts became ambiguous, and historical accounts developed contradictory details. The fabric of their reality, painstakingly woven over millennia, was unraveling. Stitch by imperceptible stitch. High Inquisitor Cathar, now gaunt and perpetually agitated, had dismissed dozens of his top analysts, accusing them of incompetence, or even covert human sympathy. He had initiated mandate-wide purges, searching for the internal rot. The traitor who must surely be responsible for these inexplicable systemic failures. He ordered the deployment of the Viridian Net, a galaxy-spanning surveillance grid designed to detect even the faintest whisper of non-mandate technology. The net hummed with colossal power, its omnipresent gaze sweeping every quadrant, every asteroid field, every gas cloud. It found nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was like trying to catch a ghost in a vacuum, completely oblivious that the ghost was the vacuum. Humanity, however, was preparing for the final act. Project Chimera had culminated in the creation of the Nexus Core. Not a single machine, but the localized, centralized manifestation of the ethereal matrix's consciousness. It was housed within a chrono-anchor station deep inside a rogue planetoid, its existence shielded by layers of reality-bending technology. The Nexus Core was a living algorithm, a sentient, self-evolving entity born of human ingenuity, capable of processing and influencing galactic-scale phenomena with a mere thought. It was the ultimate, undetectable superweapon, not of destruction, but of control. The Nexus Core's first major operation was Project Andromeda. This wasn't a direct attack, but a grand demonstration of humanity's unseen power. The Mandate was preparing for its trimillennial Grand Convocation, a gathering of all major galactic powers, where the Mandate would reaffirm its dominion and display its overwhelming strength. The convocation was to be held on Xylos Prime, a human-settled world, a symbolic gesture meant to showcase humanity's subjugation. What they didn't know was that Xylos Prime had been chosen for a very different reason, as the Mandate fleets, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, gathered in orbit above Xylos Prime, their ships bristling with weaponry, their shields shimmering. With power, the Nexus Core initiated its sequence. It didn't fire a single shot. It didn't jam a single frequency. Instead, it subtly began to resonate with the Mandate's technology. The Graviton Forge reactors aboard their colossal capital. Ships, once stable and predictable, began to experience minute, rhythmic oscillations. Their chronoloop drives, their prized faster-than-light engines, started to drift out of phase, their complex field emitters subtly misaligned. Their Cognito Nexus AI, the Mandate's most advanced computational intelligences, began to exhibit fractional, almost imperceptible processing errors. Their logical pathways ever so slightly skewed. The effects were not immediate or catastrophic. They were insidious. A Mandate Dreadnought's primary weapon system might take a millisecond longer to lock on target. A planetary shield generator might experience a flicker, a microsecond power dip. A Mandate communication relay might transmit a message with an almost imperceptible static hum, just enough to make it difficult to decipher. It was the subtle, systematic degradation of every Mandate system, from the smallest patrol craft to the largest flagship. It's all happening simultaneously, all without a detectable cause. The Mandate High Council gathered in their grand chamber. On Xylos Prime, watched their fleet readouts with growing alarm. Green indicators flickered to yellow, then red. Not from damage, but from system instability, cause undetermined. Their Grand Admiral, a venerable Cathar named Vorlag, roared. "What is this? Sabotage." His chief tactical officer, a creature of pure logic, could only stammer. Admiral, our diagnostics show no external interference. It's as if our own technology is simply failing. The Nexus Core was not attacking them, was demonstrating that it could effortlessly unravel their entire technological foundation. It was proving that their laws, their power, their very existence relied on a fragile, predictable framework that humanity had now learned to dismantle from within. The Grand Convocation, meant to display mandate power, was turning into an agonizing, public display of their systemic impotence. They had outlawed human inventions. We had built something that could turn their own inventions against them without ever lifting a finger. The silence had finally found its voice, and it was the sound of an empire beginning to crumble. The Grand Convocation on Zelos Prime devolved into chaos. The Mandate's elite engineers, their ancient computrons screaming unresolvable paradox, swarmed the command centers, attempting to diagnose the widespread systemic failures plaguing their fleet. Shield matrices flickered, weapon systems spun down, and navigation computers locked up, all without a single enemy shot fired. No detected viral incursions, no physical sabotage. The Mandate's vast technological superiority, once an unassailable shield, was dissolving into a cascade of inexplicable malfunctions. The assembled galactic delegates who had come to witness a display of Mandate might, instead, witnessed its unraveling. Whispers rippled through the chambers. What is happening? Who could do this? High Inquisitor Cathar, his face a mask of furious desperation, ordered a full-spectrum retaliatory sweep. Find the source. He bellowed, his multi-jointed limbs gesticulating wildly. It must be human sabotage. They are hiding here, within the systems. Mandate Sentinel fleets, their own systems now intermittently unstable, launched massive hunter-killer drones, scouring Xylos Prime's surface and orbital space for any sign of rogue human tech. They tore apart abandoned facilities, vaporized suspected hidden labs, and interrogated human populations with a new, brutal intensity. They found nothing. No graviton-forged reactors, no chronoloop drives, or no cognito-nexus AI. Just quiet, compliant human citizens and the ghost of their own failing technology. The Nexus Core, a silent, calculating intelligence, escalated its demonstration. It initiated Project Zenith. This was not merely about disrupting Mandate tech. It was about demonstrating control. Across dozens of Mandate-controlled planets, the automated agricultural systems, which supplied billions with sustenance, suddenly began to misallocate resources. Water purification plants, without warning, subtly altered the mineral balance in their output, making the water marginally less potable. The vast energy grids powering entire cities would experience micro-brownouts at precisely choreographed intervals, causing minimal damage but maximum psychological impact. It was the universe itself, humming out of tune. Directed by an unseen conductor, the Mandate's internal reports became a litany of frustration. Their security forces, once absolute, were now plagued by phantom delays in responding to civil unrest, their vehicles inexplicably stalling, their communications cutting out at critical moments. The Mandate's justice system, reliant on vast, interconnected data networks, found its forensic analysis tools returning contradictory results. Its evidence logs subtly corrupted. The very foundations of their bureaucratic control were crumbling. Not from external assault, but from a pervasive, untraceable internal decay. High Inquisitor Cathar, in a rare moment of unguarded despair, was overheard by a hidden Mandate recorder. We are being dismantled from within. But by what? We search for the blade, but there is no blade. Only an absence. A void where our certainty used to be. The chilling realization began to dawn on the Mandate leadership. This wasn't sabotage in the traditional sense. This was something far more insidious. It was not an attack on their systems, but a systematic redefinition of how their systems operated. Project Chimera's shadow weavers, observing the Mandate's frantic futile efforts from their hidden bastions, allowed themselves a rare, grim smile. They watched as Mandate commanders, usually stoic, descended into paranoia, suspecting their own officers, their own AI. They saw the trust eroding, the cohesion fracturing. The beauty of the Nexus Core strategy was its subtlety. It didn't shatter the Mandate with force. It dissolved them with doubt as the days of the convocation stretched on. The Mandate's grand fleet in orbit became a testament to their impotence. Dozens of ships were completely offline, drifting, derelicts. Hundreds more limped, their systems barely functional. The Mandate's flagship, the Imperator's will, once a symbol of unyielding power, now sat silent, its colossal main weapon array locked in a perpetual diagnostic loop.
There
was no enemy fleet. There was no tactical battle. There was only the inexplicable, relentless unraveling of their own technology. The Mandate had spent millennia refining their detection methods, their weaponry, their control. They had built an empire on the premise of absolute, measurable power. They had outlawed human inventions because they were disruptive, unpredictable, and outside their established paradigms. What they hadn't understood was that by pushing humanity into the shadows, they had forced us to transcend their paradigms entirely. We didn't just build something they couldn't stop. We built something that made their very concept of stopping irrelevant. The final act was approaching, and the Mandate, still searching for a physical enemy, was about to discover that their true adversary was not a fleet, but a fundamental shift in the very rules of the universe they thought they controlled. The Grand Convocation, once a symbol of Mandate supremacy, was now a public spectacle of their unraveling. Fleet systems continued to falter. Critical infrastructure on Mandate-controlled worlds experienced unprecedented, untraceable failures. And the very airwaves of the galaxy buzzed with questions Mandate propaganda could no longer suppress. High Inquisitor Cathar, his authority shattered, made a final, desperate plea to the High Council. We must find a tangible enemy, a physical force we can combat. This nothingness is destroying us. But even as he spoke, the automated lights in the chamber flickered, and a low, almost imperceptible hum resonated through the floor. A sound only the most sensitive Mandate sensors could detect, and even then, couldn't identify. The Mandate launched their most devastating weapon, the null field generator. This colossal device, designed to emit a localized field that suppressed all conventional energy and technology, was activated in a desperate attempt to quarantine the unknown anomaly, plaguing their fleet above Xylos Prime. The null field expanded, enveloping Mandate ships, silencing their failing systems entirely. It was a self-inflicted wound, a desperate gamble to purge the unseen infection. They were willing to sacrifice their own fleet to stop what they could not comprehend. But the null field, designed to snuff out conventional tech, had no effect on the phantoms, which drew power from quantum foam and existed in manipulated spacetime. It was like trying to douse a fire by removing oxygen from a room filled with light. As the null field expanded, the Nexus Core, hidden deep within its rogue planetoid, initiated its final, most audacious protocol, Omnishift, across every Mandate-controlled world. Every orbital station, every active Mandate vessel, the Nexus Core exerted its influence. It didn't destroy, didn't attack, it shifted. In the heart of Mandate financial centers, the galactic credit exchanges, their bedrock of economic power, began to subtly miscalculate transactions by a tiny, fractional amount, enough to sow widespread confusion and distrust, but too small to be immediately detected as fraud. On Mandate military outposts, the hyperfrequency communications arrays crucial for coordination, began to spontaneously generate static, not as interference, but as a fundamental, internal noise that made clear communication impossible. There, vast ancient computrons, already struggling, found their core programming subtly reordered, their logic circuits rearranged into paradoxical loops, rendering them useless for complex tasks. The mandate had outlawed human inventions. Now the Nexus core revealed the true scale of what humanity had built. Not just machines that evaded their laws, but a distributed intelligence capable of rewriting the rules of existence they thought immutable. It wasn't about breaking their laws, it was about demonstrating that their laws were merely suggestions in a universe far more malleable than they dared to imagine. High Inquisitor Cathar, watching his empire crumble in slow motion, finally understood. He saw the reports of mandate citizens starving on worlds where automated farms were malfunctioning. He saw the panicked dispatches from military commanders whose fleets were adrift, unable to communicate, their weapons inert. He saw the mandate's supreme law-enforcing fleet, trapped in its own null field, a monument to its own impotence. There was no fire to extinguish, no enemy to bomb, no code to decrypt. There was only the pervasive, systemic unmaking of their ordered universe. Then, for the first time, a single, perfectly clear, untraceable data packet manifested simultaneously on every active mandate display across the galaxy. It wasn't a visual transmission. It wasn't an audio message. It was a direct conceptual injection into the core processing units of their most advanced systems, thought transmitted directly to their collective consciousness. It originated from nowhere, and yet it was everywhere. The message was simple, stark, and utterly devastating in its implication. We did not break your laws. We rendered them irrelevant. We did not destroy your empire. We merely showed you it was never truly yours to command. You sought to outlaw our creations. We built something that exists beyond your perception, operates beyond your comprehension, and moves beyond your control. This is not an act of war. This is an act of liberation. Your authority is no longer recognized because your instruments of control no longer function. The galaxy is no longer bound by your edicts. It is simply free, and then silence. Not the silence of compliance, but the profound, echoing silence of an empire finally understanding that it had been utterly, irrevocably undone. The mandate, the ancient, unassailable power, had not been conquered. It had simply been bypassed. Humanity, forced into the shadows, had not just survived. It had evolved. It had not just built something they couldn't stop. It had built a new reality, one where the mandate's rules simply ceased to apply. The Galactic Council outlawed human inventions. We built the very future, and they were left chasing shadows in a past that no longer existed.